maybe I could get...
How's she doing?
Ellie was going to go first, right? I mean...
Today, live from the Bridges at the Green, located in Rock Hill, Connecticut, the Rock Hill Historical Society presents for your entertainment Martha Tilton and the Benny Goodman Orchestra, Helen Forrest with Artie Shaw and his orchestra, screen star Margaret O'Brien, stage and screen tap dancing star Eleanor Powell, Ina Ray Hutton and her all-girl orchestra, Marion Hutton with the Modern Airs and the Glenn Miller Orchestra, Carmen Miranda and... Oh, sorry, I had the wrong program.
That's good.
Actually, thank you all for coming today. My name is Mike Martino. I'm the president of the Rock Hill Historical Society. And today's program is Local Women in World War II. And we have three panelists who are going to speak to you about their experiences in the service during the war from both countries, from England and from the United States. Right here we have Ellie Revill, Loretta McSwigan, and Gladys Sztupak. Now when I introduce them, I'm going to introduce them as they were and their ranks. And also, when they're done speaking, they would be glad to take questions from the audience. And if any of you out there have any experiences that you want to share with us from either World War II or from the sentimental 1940s or the home front, just feel free. Okay. Our first speaker is going to be Senior Lieutenant Eleanor Delmar, U.S. Naval Reserve.
Well, it's just being lieutenant.
Oh.
Well, thank you, Mike. I joined the Waves, which is... Thank you. Prompt me if I drop it. I joined the Waves in 1943. We had been at war since Pearl Harbor, which was 41. And I wanted to get into the act of defeating Hitler. So I volunteered for the Navy, and they accepted me on the 3rd of May, 1943. By the 31st of July, they told me to report for active duty as an apprentice seaman at the Naval Training Station in Northampton, Massachusetts. And there it was, we had basic training. On the 27th of August, they appointed me a midshipman. On the 21st of September, I received a commission as an ensign. The 23rd of September, 43, I went to Mount Holyoke College for training in communications. From there, I went to the headquarters of the commander of the Eastern Sea Frontier in New York City at 90 Church Street to report for duty. There, my duties were coding and decoding operational messages of shipping in the Atlantic Ocean. Our shipping, our enemy shipping, naval operations, and the works. And, well, let's see, after a while, we had, they began to take waves in Hawaii, and that sounded interesting to me. So I volunteered for that and got on a long waiting list. I never made it to Hawaii. On the 7th of May, 45, we had VE Day, and there was great dancing in the streets and having great celebrations. And then a few months later, there was VJ Day, and all of a sudden they didn't need to encode and decode any messages on the Atlantic shipping, so they didn't need our office anymore. So I was reassigned for duty in Washington, D.C., actually in one of the suburbs, Carter Rock, Maryland, at the David Taylor Model Basin, which was a very interesting place to be. There they built models of ships and aircraft and tested them in great giant tanks where they moved the water past the hull. Instead of having the hull move forward, the water moved past it. And they had wind tunnels for the aircraft. And let's see, I had a lot of different duties there. I was secret and top secret control officer, custodian of registered publications, communications officer, landlines officer, postal officer, women's reserve representative, and officer in charge of the records vault. Also officer messenger and a public relations officer. As officer messenger, they first wanted me to go around with a pistol strapped to my waist. And I thought, this is so obvious that I've got something very special if I dress like that. But if I just look like everybody else and don't have a pistol on, which I wasn't very good at shooting anyway, nobody noticed me and I could do a much better job. And that worked much better. Let's see, then, after I'd been there a couple of months, I was appointed a lieutenant. This was because the job called for a lieutenant, and I was just a lieutenant junior grade at that point. So they said if I was reassigned to another job, I'd go back to lieutenant junior grade, which I never did. I stayed there until I left, which was about 2 years. So in, I lost myself. In 29th, I couldn't do that. I got this wrong. Sorry about this, but my notes are deceiving me. I had a lot of sort of interesting adventures in this duty with the
A little louder, thanks.
interesting adventures with this duty with the model basin. As the representative of the waves, I was not a very nice duty, but one of the waves was hit by a propeller of an airplane. She got, when they're going around, they're invisible, and it hit her in the head. And fortunately, she survived, and they cured her, but she was really knocked out of duty for a long time. She was able to go back to work, but as I visited her in the hospital and tried to help her in any way I could. I'm trying to think what else happened there. When I was stationed in New York at the headquarters of the Commander of the Eastern Sea Frontier, we participated in sinking a submarine off the New Jersey coast. The messages were coming through our office, and we felt we sank it. Of course, we had help, but it was a very exciting day. Well, then I left the service because the war had been over for some time, and I thought it was time to get on with civilian life. And I had 56 days of terminal leave coming to me. And during that time, I was entitled to travel on any Navy aircraft that had an empty seat, and for free, no charge at all. And so a friend and I were all set to go to California. And we had our luggage on the plane and everything. And somebody came along with higher rank and wanted our seats. So we were bumped off. And instead of going to California, we looked around on the flight board, said, where can we go? And there was 2 seats to Bermuda. So I went to Bermuda. And there I met Peter. And things took a different course from then on. And we were married in October. And I went to live in Bermuda. So in the middle of the next year, I sent in my resignation from the Naval Reserve. I said, I'm married to an alien, and we're getting into this hot, cold war, and I don't want to be called back to active duty. And so they released me, and I got on with my civilian life. So, well, Hand it to Mike.
Give the mic to Mike.
Yep, Mike's Mike. I forgot to introduce my alter ego. I can no longer get into the uniform, but she can. And so that's what we look like, except I didn't have two left hands, thank goodness. And I don't have a serious spinal curvature like that. But
Can I ask a question? What qualified you for OCS?
for what?
What qualified you for OCS?
Well, I was a college graduate, and they took college graduates. In fact, I was about to be a college graduate when they accepted me. I thought we were going to have the questions at the end. Are we going to do that? Yeah. Sorry. You'll have your
Questions
turn.
at the end. Our next speaker is Private Lorette Mittler, Lady Marine.
I was introduced as Lorette Swinga, but it's not Lorette Swing, it's Lorette Swinga. So I wanted to get that straight. I was in the Women's Marines Corps. And when Pearl Harbor was attacked in December 7th, 1941, it was between quarters at Ohio State University, where I had been enrolled for the 1940-41 quarters, studying horticulture. My friend, who was working at Wright-Patterson Field in Dayton, Ohio, persuaded me to apply for a job there as a typist. I did and got the job, $2,100 a year. When my parents came back from Florida, I told them that I wasn't going back to school, but I was going to Wright-Patterson Field in Dayton, Ohio, and they weren't surprised. I soon was transferred out of the typist pool for special parts in the Signal Corps. We were responsible for issuing the spare parts for communications on the field and necessary repairs for the maintenance of the planes. I was there at Wright-Patterson Field for 2 years. My older sister, who had lost her husband when his plane was shot down in Africa, she left her job as an art teacher to pursue the job as a civilian draftsman for the Coast Guard at Sparrows Point. My younger sister had signed up for the Civilian Nurses Corps training at Ohio State University, but had to give it up when she married a pilot. My cousin, who was a Marine, was also influential. My mother and father had to both approve of my duty because I was only 20 years old. Since I worked at Wright-Patterson Field in Dayton, Ohio, that's where I joined. I left from Cincinnati, Ohio on November 11th, not knowing a soul. We were sent to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for 6 weeks of training to be a Marine. Every once in a while we had to hit the deck at 4 in the morning for running and exercises. The hardest part was standing at attention while the drill instructor barked out instructions, the Marine Corps rules and regulations, and duties. We were all surprised when a blonde women's Marine from Texas said in answer to the question, "How do you get the peroxide so even on your hair?" She said without hesitation, "I use a toothbrush, sir." After 6 weeks of boot camp, we went on to assignments such as stenographers, clerks, paymasters, aerial gunnery instructors, photographers, truck drivers, aviation mechanics, radio operators, cooks, parachute packers, and so forth. I was fortunate enough to get orders for aerial gunnery synthetic gun air structure at Cherry Point, South Carolina. Here we learned just what was expected of us to ably teach the soldiers and lieutenants, the bombers and the fighter planes, both identification. We had both synthetic link trainers for fighter planes and synthetic bombers for the movable turrets. The bachelor officers' quarters became our second floor of the barracks. We soon noticed that Marines were standing out trying to get a glimpse of the women Marines. They had no blinds on the barracks, but we took care of that with blankets. After 2 months of aerial gunnery, we were assigned to Parris Island. I was at Parris Island, Page Field. Our assignment was 10 women Marines, a sergeant, a lieutenant, all great girls from all over the United States, and the staff sergeant from New York named Charlie Garaclanian. His parents were in the business of well, I'll tell you in a minute. For the synthetic aerial gunnery instruction, we were responsible for both movable turrets and fixed turrets, the bombers and the fighter planes. Every new squadron arrived, we taught both the enlisted men as well as the officers. We taught identification of both airplanes and seaplanes, enemy and friendly. We gave identification drills for which we gave evaluation. Oh, he was in the restaurant business in New York City. Charlie Garaclanian, I'll never forget it. We had a Bell and Howell projector for identification as well as the USO films. The servicemen particularly liked Lena Horne singing Stormy Weather in her slinky gowns, and they played it over and over and over and over again, requested it over and over again. I think it was worn out by the time we finished with the Stormy Weather. I personally like being able to sketch some of the planes that were pictured in the publications. Both the officers and enlisted men appreciated these. Between squadrons of official duty, as a private, I was given mess duty very often. So it was time off between breakfast and lunch and supper, with free time for golf or the rifle range and letter writing. On mess duty, we had to swab the deck after every meal. We actually had a rope to line up the peanut butter jars, the jelly glasses, the salts and peppers, and the sugar jars to see that they were in alignment. There was a lot of peanut butter and jelly consumed, just in case the food wasn't to your liking. I remember when I had planned a 72-hour pass and was planning to go to Florida with my buddies. I received a telegram from a soldier friend of mine that he was going to be in my area and could I meet him. The Marine Corps took care of my dilemma. I had mess duty. When we were on permanent assignments, we had duties to perform every morning, such as swabbing the deck, cleaning latrines, washing the sinks, and so forth. My duty this particular morning was to polish the 3-foot by 6-foot mirror that everyone used. I chose to use Bon-Ami. I soon found out you don't use Bon-Ami to polish mirrors. My buddies came to my rescue, all working frantically. The cattle wagon that was used to transport us to Page Field was honking furiously in the parking lot. Pee-Pee LaPointe, that was her name, had to meet the schedule too, the driver. She was the driver. Fifi LaPointe. I'll never forget her either. She had to meet her schedule too. Well, we made it. She was about 4 feet tall or something, very short, and she drove that cattle wagon like the dickens. I had the same bunkmate the whole time, a marvelous girl from Florida. We are still in touch. She married a Marine drill instructor who stayed in the service. My bunkmate was disappointed to not receive mail very much. She stood in line always hoping. She wrote to anything, whoever it was, just so she'd receive some mail. I really felt sorry for her because I had sisters, a mother and father and cousins and many thoughtful friends who kept in touch. My sergeant was a good girl, a nice girl from Connecticut. She married a Marine, another drill instructor from Ohio. She passed away just this past year. The drill instructors were more permanently on the staff. 4 girls that I knew of married drill instructors. We had many movies as part of our time off, along with the slop shoot where we could go for a beer or a beverage of your choice. And we had occasional dances at the non-commissioned officers' clubs. I really think that I freed a Marine to fight, as they say. I think of this when I think of the synthetic gun air structure training, the identification drills, and the occasional mess duty. Because of the GI Bill, I was able to finish my interrupted education in 1947. In 1946, I took a 2-week course in floral design at Tommy Bright School in Chicago. She was a marvelous teacher. I really learned basic floral design from her. It has since become known as the American School of Floral Design. So I feel I owe something to you. I was able to teach at the Plant Science Department at the University of Connecticut for 10 years while working at flower shops, mainly Guido's in Portland. I also was able to give classes and demonstrations in floral design. We started Lorette's Flower Shop in 1964, and 37 years later, we closed it, Lorette's. My husband realized that I needed help, so he came to my rescue in 1970. He had received his master's degree in horticulture, so it was a big help. Our son came with us in 1975 with a master's degree in educational theater. He used his speech and theatrical experience to good advantage. It has been a long journey, but a rewarding one.
And now we're going to cross the ocean and go over to England with Colonel Gladys Young. That's what you told me. Oh, Corporal. What's up? Nobody's going to know now. Of the Auxiliary Territorial Service of the British Army who was stationed in Britain. Colonel?
I wasn't in the American Army. I was in the British Army. My name is Gladys Sztupak, and I was born young. I was born and brought up in London, England. And the Second World War in England, in Britain actually, started in September 3rd, 1939. But we didn't get everything was quiet until about, I think it was August 1940. And then all hell broke loose. They started bombing us unmercifully. And of course, since I lived at the east end of London where all the docks were, we got the worst of it. So we would be down the shelters night and day, night and day. When the war started, we weren't surprised because...
You hold it a little closer.
Oh, you can't hear? Closer?
That's good.
Is that better? And when the war started, we weren't surprised because everybody had been issued a gas mask. We were issued a shelter for the backyard, and also all the parks and all the open land in London, they had dug them up for the public shelters. So we were bombed night and day, and we were so tired of it, apart from the danger. But when you're young, you don't think anything's going to happen to you. Everybody else, but not you. So anyway, in England, or Britain, I should say, the Irish and the Welsh and the Scottish don't like it when we say English. We were drafted like the men when we were 18. So my friend and I said, well, may as well join now before they call us up, and we can choose what we want to do. So we went to the basic training. We had a basic training, and then we what was the first thing we did? Oh, we went to driving school. And when we finished our driver's training, where we were posted to London. I thought we'd get away from the bombing, but we were posted to London. Well, we didn't care too much for that because we were posted to this little unit that just delivered the food and the supplies to other units, and the men didn't like us at all because we were there taking their jobs away so they could go overseas. So really, we didn't blame them. But anyway, we didn't care for that. So after a while, we mastered in the service, and we got another job. We were the training unit again. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Oh, by the way, I didn't explain that in England we were called the ATS, which is Auxiliary Territorial Service. So those initial structure. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. Actually, I did want to go on the anti-aircraft guns, but I didn't pass my test. So then I didn't know what I wanted to do. So there's a girl. So the sergeant said, "Anybody here knows how to drive a car?" So the girl next to me said, "Put up your hand. They're going to teach you anyway," which they did. I had never driven in my life. So that's when we got our training. And I'm getting a little bit mixed up as I'm here. Yes, I am, because I told you before that we were posted. But anyway, we didn't care for that too much. So then we remastered and we were sent to the signals corps. No training or anything, just sent to the signals corps. But we did learn on the job. And I really liked it. It was very interesting because we trained, we were administrative actually. The women weren't active, they were non-combatant. We were just, we did most of the administrative work. But the signal corps was very interesting, and then came, I think it was a 9 months training. We had different nationalities that we trained as well, the Allies, so that they would get used to the same technology and phraseology, because there was different phraseology between Americans and English in those days, a lot of difference. So and the men learned all phases of signals, all different phases of signals. Now in London in those days was very, very unique and unparalleled, I think, because they had all these different nationalities, servicemen from so many different countries. They had, was British, not too many of them, most of those were abroad. They had American, Canadian, Polish, Norwegian, Dutch, New Zealand, Australian, South African. They were all congregated in England. They were waiting actually to go overseas for the invasion. But of course we didn't know at the time. I bet there's never been so many different nationality soldiers, allies, together in one place. So anyway, let me see, what did I say here? I'm trying to think what I said. Looking at other things. Well, anyway, we were stationed there one morning. We were told very early in the morning, everybody get up and pack, we're moving out. So we had to move up north, out of the southern part of England, because they were getting ready for the invasion. And we didn't really know at that time why. So I was stationed, I was never out of the country. I wanted to go out of the country, but I never was, because I was in a training unit, they never sent me out. So we were stationed in Yorkshire and the moors. You know, you've read about the Yorkshire moors in some of the, in the books, the novels, and Scotland, and different places anyway. And then after the war, of course, not everybody is just let go gradually, or let go, you're demobbed as we call it in England. So I think I was demobbed in 1946, yeah, 46. So that's about all I can say. Anybody have any questions or anything? Now, we were stationed. We did have some funny things happen sometimes, and all the distress and everything. We had an area shelter in the backyard, but it was just a piece of corrugated iron that the government gave here, just a little corrugated iron like that. Well, a piece of plane went through ours, so I used to go across the street to the park where they had a public shelter, which was better because you had people to talk to. Somebody would bring in a guitar and we would sing the night would go that way. And there was a boy who was always hanging around me, and I didn't know the boy, he was always hanging around me. But I noticed that there was one man there who was always giving beer to cigarettes, making such a fuss of it. And I thought, oh, it must be his father. But it turned out he thought it was my father. So he was battering him up because he thought it was my father. And then when we were stationed in London, the government took over these big houses. If you had a big house, only one or two people living there, and then the government would confiscate your house. You had to find somewhere to live. And then they would have the troops come in and use it for offices, government offices or something. So when we were in this part of London, we were in this beautiful house. It really was nice. All girls, of course, we were girls stationed there. And the man who owned the house, he used to come every now and then. He was living in the tower in my room. He would come all the time and he would say, now you girls spoiling my floors? Because he had a beautiful oak spiral staircase, beautiful oak hallway. It was a beautiful house. We said no, which we were. We took good care of it. But when we had to leave to go up north, the Free French came in. And I thought, oh gosh, I wonder what happened to the floors with their big hobnailed boots. They must have really spoiled them. So I think that's about all I can say. Nothing else to say.
Thank you, ladies. Anyone else have any questions from the audience?
This lady just spoke. I'm not quite sure what the function of the signal corps is.
Well, all kinds of signals, and of course in those days it's different to now, no computers or anything. We used to call it keyboard line, and then they had what they called it operational visual with the flags and the lights, you know, how they flicker the lights, you know, the signals, all kinds of signals they used to teach. There's maybe 6 or 7 different kinds of signals that they used to teach. And we always had 2 openings for the different, for like Americans, Canadians, and so on, so they would learn the same terminology. For instance, when we were on the switchboard in England, where we had everything was manual, and you know, you had the little thing that opened and you put the plug in, and if you would say, if the person was talking, you would say, are you through? Which meant, are you talking to your party? See? But the Americans would say, are you through? And they pull the plugs up. So you had to learn the same terminology. See?
Anybody else? Yes.
I was attached to the British Army in North Africa, and two things bugged me for many years. Did the women have to wear hobnail shoes?
No. Right, did you see them with hobnail? You're talking about British women?
Well, I'm talking about, I'm talking about British men. They all had hobnails on their
Oh, sort of, yes, you know, very heavy boots they had.
One of the women had a wear too.
No, we were very jealous of the American women because their uniforms were much nicer than ours. Their shoes were nice, everything was nice, their hats. When they came over to England, we were very jealous of them because they were nicer than ours.
One other question. The British, when we were trooping with them, they got a 10-minute break out of every hour.
Fatigue?
They want 50 minutes, they get 10 minutes off. And in that 10 minutes, everybody came out with about the size of a coffee can. There was a little gasoline heater. Did the government supply them, or did others buy them on their own?
What do they have in there?
They had gasoline, but they made a pot of tea every time.
Oh, it was fatigue. It was fatigue.
I wonder if that was a government issue or whether they bought them.
You were out in North Africa? Did you say? Well, my brother was taken prisoner there at Tobruk.
Well, we were just beyond the Siegfried line on this side, and we were near off.
And he was taken to Italy, and then he was taken to Germany. And I had two other brothers, one in the Navy. He used to come to this country for food. We had a special name for it, and I've forgotten. The Marshall Plan, was it, or something? And he used to come here and bring food, because there was a blockade in England. And then I had another brother.
We have heavy equipment. We have a repair a road in case the Germans counterattack, so that the English could come and meet the United States troops.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of France on the Tunisian border.
Well, my brother, the one who was taken prisoner in Tobruk, his idol is Rommel, the German general, because they were taken prisoner, and the Germans were putting the English prisoners on the front of the tanks, and then they were going towards the English, and they knew that the British wouldn't fire, and if they did, they killed the prisoners, the English prisoners. But Rommel came somehow, and he said, "Stop that at once," and he made them stop it. So Rommel is my brother, although we're English, he was German, that's his idol. Because he said he was a very good general, very fair and everything. And as long as they behaved themselves when they were prisoners, they were treated okay. Not like the concentration camps, prison camps. They were treated well as long as they didn't try to run away or try to escape or something.
Any more questions?
I was just wondering if you would relate to us something of your experience with the bombing in London.
I could tell you a little amusing story in a way. This was in August 1940, and my mother said to me, "Go to see your grandmother, see how she is." Well, of course, we didn't have any phones then or anything. And I was complaining. I was 18 years old. I said, "Oh, I've got a date tonight." It was Saturday. I said, "I've got a date tonight. I'm going out." So she said, "Well, go see my mother and see if she's okay." And she said, "Take your sister with you." And my sister was 10. I said, "Okay," and I was complaining all the time. So I went to see my grandmother. And we stayed a while. And then I said, "Well, we're leaving now." And just as we did, the siren went. And so she said, "Oh, stay with me, don't leave me." I said, "They never drop anything. The sirens always go." But this was the beginning of the Blitz. So we were down her shelter, and we didn't know what was going on. I mean, bombarding and everything. We had no idea what was going on outside. And finally I said, "Oh, I'm not staying here any longer." I was frightened. I said, "I'm not staying here any longer." She kept on saying, "If we only had a man, if we only had a man." I said, "What good would a man do?" So when we got out, there was devastation all around, the fires, all the houses. Those houses hadn't been bombed, but it sort of collapsed, with all the vibration from the bombing and this and that. And I said, "We better come home with me then, Gran." So she went a minute, let me get my underwear. So most people would have a little bag packed with a change of underwear in case they had to leave their house very quickly or something because of the bombing. So I picked up the bag. I found it about, it seemed so heavy, but I wasn't thinking about that. I just wanted to get home to my house. And my grandmother, she liked to drink a little bit. So every 5 minutes you had to stop and have a drink. She'd say, I have to have a drink. And they were planes were dive-bombing, by the docks, all the ships were burning in the docks and everything. It was terrible. So they were going a bit farther and she'd say, I have to have a drink. And she'd stop again and have another drink. So finally we got home. I thought we'd never get home. And silly, I was silly enough. I thought that where I lived it wouldn't be bad, but it was almost as bad where I lived. My family were down in the shelter. We found them in the shelter. So anyway, this bag, all along, it was heavy for me. And I was sort of, back in my mind, I was thinking, why is it so heavy? But when I opened it, she said, oh, in her cockney way, she said, my greens and taters. There was 5-pound potatoes in there and cabbages. I picked up the wrong one. So that was amusing. Now, we were being bombed night and day. And another amusing thing to me, we were going another shelter, a public shelter, and there were these two Spitfire pilots came down, they were Canadian, and we were so afraid. And we were used to, we were blasé by this time. We said, oh, it's nothing, nobody's going to hit us. They were really afraid. I said, why are you so nervous? I said, you're pilots. They said, yes, but we're usually up there, not down here. So there were a lot of amusing things.
Any more questions? Some from this side of the ocean? Does anybody want to relay stories they had from World War II? Okay. Also like to mention that the corsages that the ladies are wearing were donated by the Root System florist on Main Street, in Rocky Hill.
Very nice and lovely.
And on behalf of the Rockville Historical Society, I'd like to thank you all for attending. And we also like to thank Mary Pugliese from the Bridges to Green and the Bridges for having us here. And that concludes today's program. There's refreshments in the back and over there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Get good. I miss out my notes. I miss my notes.
I couldn't sit there. I didn't have it fully written out. You guys did good. Well, they did very good. Standing up there. Yeah, I did very well. I did better than I would have